The first question will be addressed to, and I'm going to drop the first names just in the interest of time, if you don't mind. The first question will be going to Biddle, Lopez, Orange, and Patterson. Over the last 30 years, real income for most D.C. residents has stagnated, while the wealthiest have been seeing dramatic gains. In light of current economic and budget conditions, what changes, if any, should be made to our income tax structure? Mr. Biddle?
Thank you. Well, I think this is a twofold problem. One is that we have to get underneath the problem of why income for many of our lower income residents is not increasing. Because the fact of the matter is, we have failed fundamentally to both support young people in our education system as well as supporting workers in achieving the skills they need to be competitive in the workforce that, quite frankly, is continuing to grow in the District of Columbia. And we frankly have a lot of attractive jobs in the city that we have not made accessible to many of our residents. We've got to make sure that we get underneath that. In terms of how do we approach our tax policy for residents that are much more successful, we need to look at how do we equitably change our tax code so that residents whose capacity to earn continues to grow and outpace others begin to pay a more equitable share of their income in taxes so that we can support the city overall. But I think we need to be certain that we're raising the floor for many of our wage earners who are getting left behind.
Mr. Lopez.
I support the progressive tax movement. I believe if you make more money and you live in D.C., you should pay more. I think it's unfair to cut services to people who are the poorest and most vulnerable in our city. So I support that movement.
Mr. Orange.
First, let me just say I believe that everything should be on the table. And there needs to be a comprehensive approach to our current fiscal problems, the $550 to $600 million deficit. And one way to really look at that is this whole idea of Medicaid reimbursements. No one's talking about going in and fixing that because that's a pot of money that's available and the other grants. When I was on the council in 1998, we had the same situation, a $518 million deficit, yet we were able to reduce taxes. That's when we reduced the individual income tax. That's when we reduced real property tax. But we had a plan, and the plan was called the Economic Resurgence of Washington, D.C., Citizens Plan for Prosperity. We need to re-examine that document and get our best minds together. Alice Riveling was a part of that. Tony Williams and others, and see how we approach this in a comprehensive manner. If taxes need to be raised, then so be it. But we need to first go through the necessary steps to make sure that we're getting all the dollars that we are due before we go forward with taxes, increasing taxes.
Mr. Patterson.
As I stated in my opening remarks, I live in Ward 8, and there we have basically 30% unemployment. And those are the figures basically of people who are actually documented and actually trying to gain work. I came in here quite honestly thinking we shouldn't raise taxes, but I spoke to a young man who's actually sitting at the end of the table, and he kind of educated me on progressive tax. And I could wholeheartedly support looking at a progressive tax system that would make sure that people who earn an extra amount of money, larger than the smaller groups, pay their fair share.
I'll start with one of my follow-up questions for Mr. Biddle. There was a specific income tax vote that was fairly contentious in the last budget round in the D.C. Council. Now that you're an at least interim and you're hoping permanent D.C. Council member, if you had been on the council a few months ago when that came up, what would your vote have been on the issue of the income tax increase that was specifically proposed? Or if that comes up again this year in the budget, will you vote for or against it?
Is it fair for me to ask a follow-up question of you?
I guess you have a minute, so we can use whatever period you want.
So let's get some details on the table, and I can tell you where I am on it in terms of what the proposal actually was. Because you're right, I was not on the council at the time. Been on the council for the last 3 weeks, so if you provide me a few more details, I can give you a slightly more educated answer.
I unfortunately don't remember the specific numbers. I think it's probably, for purposes of the question, sufficient to say that it was a proposal to, there were actually two proposals that were considered that would have adjusted income tax brackets and would have produced fairly significant increases in revenue, not, however, I think sufficient to totally cover the deficit at that time.
So if there was a proposal to raise, it was on, on top income earners over a specific amount. I think one was, I don't remember the numbers, 100.
250.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think, the principle I would hold to here is if we're going to increase income tax, I think we should think about that for everyone, and we need to look at how, if we're going to ask people to share in the pain so that the city can generate the revenue we need to have, we need to distribute that over a large number of wage earners. I think we have to think about what's the starting point. So it's not at obviously at $40,000. It's somewhere north of that. I think that to sort of arbitrarily pick that at $150,000 or $200,000, that's the point at which people start paying more income taxes, is slightly unreasonable. Mostly because I haven't heard a lot of people who are making $150,000 suggest that. So I personally would be much more in favor of a proposal that I know is going to impact myself personally. So, stepping up small increments so that we're increasing what people are earning, but not sort of picking some sky-high income number and saying they're going to pay more taxes is more the approach that I would take.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.